in the military, even in those units, there was this like mechanism around us almost protecting us. Like they had honed us into this machine that could push ourselves to these extreme limits, but they told us when it was time to turn it off and when it was time to refit and when it was time to recover. And then I got in the entrepreneur space, and when things got difficult and, I made some early bad financial decisions, which we can get into, and all of that, I found myself with all of that weight, with the only answer I had was just go harder.
Welcome everybody to the DoorGrow Show. I'm Jason Hull, the founder and CEO of DoorGrow, the world's leading and most comprehensive coaching and consulting firm for long-term residential property management entrepreneurs. For over a decade and a half, we have brought innovative strategies and optimization to the property management industry. At DoorGrow, we are on a mission to transform property management business owners and their businesses. We want to transform the industry, eliminate the BS, build awareness, change perception, expand the market, and help the best property management entrepreneurs win. Now, let's get into the show. All right, so I have an awesome guest today. I'm hanging out here with Sean Patton. Welcome, Sean. I'm going to brag about you a little bit. Thanks for being here.
Yeah. All right. You go for it. Thanks for having me, man.
All right. So Sean is a former U.S. Army Special Forces commander, meta performance executive coach at Novus Global, and leadership keynote speaker. Sean helps leaders accomplish seemingly impossible and thrilling visions through transformation. This is your bio.
Thanks, man. I'm excited to be here.
Cool. So Sean, for those listening, I'd love for them to get a little bit of background on you. I gave a little bio, but tell them a little bit about how did you get into entrepreneurism? When did you wake up and go, hey, you know what? I'm an entrepreneur.
Well, it took a little bit. I was maybe a little late to the game. I'm from a small town in Kansas. I went to the United States Military Academy at West Point, graduated, and then spent 10 years as an active duty officer in the Army. So I was an infantry officer and then a special forces officer in 5th Special Forces Group, commanding 2 different Green Beret detachments. So it was a busy time. I feel like I crammed a lifetime of leadership lessons into those 14 years, right? Like West Point is the most intense leadership training that our nation has. And then, I was a rifle platoon leader and sniper platoon leader in Iraq. Then I was in Afghanistan with my team. So I was doing really difficult things and complex things with elite performing teams. And, despite all of that and 22 months in combat and 30 months deployed overseas, I was never really the gun guy or the gear guy.
Yeah.
It was also always about the people and the problems that we were solving. And so in 2015, a little before that, I decided that I was going to get out of the military and transition. And I just had this entrepreneurship itch that I wanted to scratch. Plus, I wanted to check out what this freedom thing that I had been hearing about all these years was all about. And so I decided to try it. And it was a rocky start.
Yeah.
I had I think I had some strengths coming out of the military in those experiences, but also some real gaps. One of them was I think my risk tolerance was so high from things I had been doing. And then also the answer in the military so often, at least in the units I was in, was when things got hard. Right? When the darkness came, when it seemed like the weight was unmanageable, the answer was just go harder.
Okay.
Like the mission is going to end. You're going to redeploy. Like the sun's going to come up. Just keep going, keep going, keep going. And what I didn't appreciate was when you get into the entrepreneurship space is that in the military, even in those units, there was this like mechanism around us almost protecting us. Like they had honed us into this machine that could push ourselves to these extreme limits, but they told us when it was time to turn it off and when it was time to refit and when it was time to recover. And then I got in the entrepreneur space, and when things got difficult and, I made some early bad financial decisions, which we can get into, and all of that, I found myself with all of that weight, with the only answer I had was just go harder.
Yeah.
And so 3 years later, I was in the hospital and had stress hives and my appendix almost burst and all these health issues, and going through my first bankruptcy or my, only bankruptcy, but bankruptcy after 3 years. And so it was a rough start to the whole thing. I had to learn a lot of lessons about myself in that
Yeah, yeah. And I think, early stage entrepreneurism, there's some similar patterns I've noticed because, I've talked to thousands of entrepreneurs. I've gone through this sort of journey. And in the beginning, yeah, we do a lot of stupid stuff. Like we make mistakes, and that's part of learning. We believe weird things like I just like your first hire should be a clone of yourself. If I could just clone myself, I call it the clone myth. Like we believe like, we think we can do everything ourselves. Oh, it'd be cheaper if I just figure out how to do it myself. If I just read the right book, watch the right YouTube video. And so we do dumb stuff. Like we don't get the support. We don't get help. We don't get mentors. Things had to get really hard before I started getting mentors, getting help, getting coaches, getting support. And I had to be humbled, before I was willing to do that. And yeah. And so I see this, a lot of people play out this journey. And then early stage as an entrepreneur, yeah, it's almost like the hustle's glamorized. And so we go through this process of like, I got to hustle. I got to work harder. That's what you do if you own a company, if you're a CEO, if you're a boss. And so you just burn yourself out. I remember I was at the end of a sales call trying to wrap it up. I was in so much pain because I think I'd slipped some sort of disc or it was bulging in my back. And I was like, by the end of the call, I'm doing this call, I was laying on the floor and I ended the call and I was like, and I was in so much pain. I wasn't able to work and had to lay down for like 2 weeks.
Oh
Yeah.
my
And then
gosh.
I realized because I hadn't been eating, I'd been just working. I hadn't been sleeping very well. I'd been just working. I thought I just need to work harder, work faster. And I didn't realize that I was like probably operating at like 10% of my effectiveness mentally. I was being stupid. And I thought I just need to work harder. I got to hustle. And I wasn't taking care of myself. And then that's when I realized, oh, if I don't take care of my body, I don't have a vehicle to achieve stuff or to get results. And I'm not even really present when I'm there with people because I'm hungry and I'm tired and I'm everywhere else. And I haven't even or my brain hasn't had a chance to clean itself like it does every night. And I haven't gotten food to fuel my brain. And I don't have all the chemicals my brain needs. I'm lacking dopamine and serotonin and GABA. And like, I'm an absolute mess. Right. And I see people do this all the time, all the time.
It's so true. In my lens, how I look through that is through a leadership lens. And I learned in the military so many great things about leading others. And as I look back at it, what I had to learn in entrepreneurship, what you're kind of talking about is like, I never really had to master leading myself.
Yeah.
I never had to look at myself as like, how am I going to lead myself? Because the way you mentioned there, like, I would never treat one of my soldiers or one of my employees or
Yeah.
have an expectation of them the way I was treating myself.
Yeah, I wouldn't
And
do
so
I
it's like,
wouldn't I
how would
wouldn't
you?
push my spouse to be like this. I'd be like, "Hey, come on, clean more, work harder, do this," right? Yeah, that marriage would be
Yeah.
over real fast. I wouldn't do that to my kids. "Come on, go." Yeah, but to ourselves, we can sometimes be a cruel leader, right? Can you dispel a myth? Because I kinda got a sense of this. I've never been in the military, and God bless you, thank you for your service. I appreciate that. But I've realized I've been listening to Jocko Willink and Leaf, whatever, their book, The Dichotomy of Leadership. And I had this belief that in the military, and I think a lot of people maybe that haven't been involved in it have this perception, military, you either give orders or you take orders. It's rigid. There's no thinking. You just are told what to do. And, I've kind of gotten a very different picture of that there's a lot of decisions and there's planning and, lives are on the line and it's painted a very different picture. Can you just touch on that? Because I think some people here, you've got this background in the military and to you, it's just, this stuff because you lived it. But for those that have never been in the military, what advantage did that give you in business and how is that different than maybe people perceive it?
It's a great question. I do think that there is this idea from either whether it's like movies about basic training
In movies, yeah.
or, or,
You
about like
blind below and
Marines.
you're told what to do. Yeah.
Yeah, you just shut up and go, right? And, there is in basic training or I would say when you're being transformed from a free citizen
Mm.
to a soldier, there is a bit of a breaking down of some of that needs to come back. But then as you build that foundation of like, when it's time to go, I go and I have some discipline and I can integrate with the unit, let's say. Then you start getting more and more responsibility. And especially as you move up in the military and you become, it's not that long, like 2 or 3 years later, even a regular military, regular army, you're going to be a team leader. So you're going to be a leader. And a lot of those kids are like 20, 19, and
Yeah.
they're in charge of 3 people. And so they're no longer just like It would make no sense to have someone just stand here and be like, what do I need to do? This is what I need to do. That doesn't work in a company, and that wouldn't work in a unit. And so
Yeah.
there needs to be input on each side. And then especially when you get into like the Navy SEALs, like Jocko was talking about, or in a special forces, I mean, the planning, I was a facilitator of mission plan, but I was by no means the smartest person in the room. And it was a very collaborative experience. And
Mm.
so my job as the commander of a 12-man special forces ODA was to receive the mission that we had been given. And that mission doesn't come down and tell us this is how you're going to do it. It says, here's the effect we need to have in the area. Here's the questions we have. And then it was up for us to sit down. And I have a warrant officer who's trained in human intelligence to a level of a CIA operative. I have an intelligence officer or an intelligence sergeant who does the same work the NSA does. My average age on my team is 30 years old, people with multiple combat experiences. The lesson that comes from the military, and maybe an issue, this is where people maybe have this misconception, but I think it's an important one for when it comes to the company, is that at the end of the day, kind of go back to Jocko's first book, honestly, Extreme Ownership, there has to be someone in charge. So as the commander, was my decision. It was like, okay, I've heard everyone's input. This is how we're going to do that. And immediately, because everyone had given their input, even if we didn't pick what their choice was, it was, okay, roger that. Now we're going to execute that as if it was our own. And so that level of ownership when it comes to planning and execution is where we turn and say, okay, we're on the same page. The rich discussion and input that happens before that is an important job. And that's why I think whether it's in the military or in the civilian world, as a leader of an organization like that, you need to be a master facilitator.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not your ideas. It's how can we be the composer of the group in front of us? And if someone is, taking over, how do we calm them down? How do we recognize when someone's voice is being stomped out and their valuable input isn't being contributed?
Right.
Like how do you handle that and get the idea so that the best concept and it comes to the top, and then get buy-in to execute?
I mean, what I'm hearing is like, this picture you're painting is you've got this team of specialists. They each bring some value and some wisdom and some knowledge to the table. They're experts at this one particular craft. They see everything through a different lens, and you're getting feedback from all these different lenses. And then as a leader, you have to decide which things are valid, which things do we incorporate. And, and it's up to each individual that's a specialist to really put some pressure on the leader to say, hey, this is significant. This is important. And it's up to the leader to make sure that, maybe that quieter voice, but to recognize what is significant if they're not making it present, because sometimes the loudest voice in the room isn't the smartest voice in the room. And so, so that's fascinating. And, business is a lot like that. But a lot of business owners, they don't even run their teams like that. They think it's a dictatorship. They mistakenly think that's how the military works. They're like, I'm the dictator and I have all the best ideas and I'm smarter than all of you. And they do. They end up as the emperor with no clothes because everybody in the team are like, yes, boss, we don't want to get fired.
Absolutely. And that's why I think that the main job of, let's say, that entrepreneur, that business owner, or that even commander, right, is your job is to craft the vision of what you're trying to create.
The outcome.
Yes, the outcome.
Clarity of outcome.
Clarity of outcome, clarity of vision of why do we exist and what impact are we trying to have in the world?
Okay.
And once people are bought into that and aligned on that, then we can have a great and rich discussion on the how, the strategy.
And so now we're talking about culture, right? Which is the foundation. Before we get into tactics, we have to have culture. In the military, you have all kind of been chosen into a particular culture. There's a set of beliefs, and that's a foundation. It's kind of, you might maybe even take it for granted, but the military has that. And a lot of businesses don't. They don't have that set culture where it's defined.
So what I will say is that this is true in the military, and I'll give you some military examples just because they're maybe interesting to your audience, and then we can talk business, is that mission dictates culture.
Yeah. Okay.
So, for example, you might have, especially a lot of the movies, right? You see like the Marines. Well, we'll be super stereotypical right now. Marines mission, their core mission is secure the beach to land ships. Okay. So if you notice, they are a bit like, just go get in line, full frontal assault. You're getting off ships on an uncovered area and you're just massive violence of action. That's how you win that battle. Okay. So they need to have a certain kind of mentality, and I'm general.
Yes.
Special Forces team will operate by, with, and through an indigenous force. So we're U.S.-sponsored insurgents. So I will go on target with 10 Americans and 300 Afghani commandos.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
that dictates a certain mission, right? And so the difference between the Marines and then maybe the Navy SEALs who are operating and their job is to take over a ship underway with 30 SEALs that all live together, work together. They know each other in their ear, like synchronized, they're precise, because you've got to be, right? You're firing weapons inside of a ship corridor. Like you have to be so precise. I can't do that on the ground with 300 Afghanis running around. Like I'm just like guns pointed this way, like you got to be much more flexible and how you plan that and how you think about success and all that is a different animal than the Marines who are on, trying to storm a beach together, a SEAL team who's operating with 30 people who've worked closely together. And then we've got 12 of us trying to work by with and through a different unit to do a different thing. The culture inside each one of those units would be completely different. In the Marines, you might have a bit more like, go here, do that. Yes, sir. How I want to jump high, jump faster. You might need that because that's what you need to storm a beach. You need very precise, very black and white, right and wrong, like precision to take down a ship with 30 people. You need to be very clear about larger intent and what is the big thing we're trying to operate here and how do we control sort of an uncontrollable mass and chaos
Yeah.
to operate a Green Beret team. If you took the culture of each one of those, if you gave that mission to a bunch of Marines who are just like, where do I go? What do I need to blow up? And you're trying to like do a sensitive political operation with 300 indigenous, it would be a disaster. And if you tried to set the precision of, because we tried to do this sometimes, like you would work with an indigenous force. If you tried to set the precision and standard of a U.S. special operator with a SEAL or a Green Beret on this indigenous force, you drive yourself crazy. Like it's not going to happen. All right. And so all of those different units have different missions. And so they all have different cultures. And to your point on your company, if you're not clear on mission, if you're not clear on the vision and like why you exist and what you're trying to do, you will end up chasing your tail on culture because you'll just start grabbing like every other leadership book and culture and just like, what about this works here, this works here, this works here, instead of saying, what are we trying to accomplish and what is the optimal culture for our mission set?
I love that. Yeah. One of our guiding documents at DoorGrow is we call it our client-centric mission statement. And it talks about who we want to serve in detail, how we will help them, what our goal is, our plan, and then what kind of the long-term sort of vision that maybe we'll never achieve, but it's the goal we're striving for. And this is what we coach our clients on getting defined because it creates culture. Then we have our how we do things. That's the company core values. And then we get into personal why statements for the business owner, business why statements. Creating all of this we call this the culture materials. There's like 6 key elements that I coach them on getting in place that help kind of make the culture visible to everybody on the team. And you're right, mission dictates culture. I love this idea because the mission of the business, which most people mistakenly think is just to make money, is actually to provide some sort of value and to solve a real problem in the marketplace. And that mission, whether you're good at it or not, and the team are conscious of it or not, and you're focused on it or not, dictates whether or not you have good culture that actually achieves outcomes.
Yeah,
That makes a lot of
absolutely.
sense.
Because I love that you have that structure, and I love how you also tied that down to personal why statements. Because this is another leadership issue that I see with a lot of entrepreneurs or big companies, honestly, too, is that there is this assumption that you've accepted this job description and here's what matters to the company. And therefore, what matters to maybe me as your leader or boss or the division or the company is also the most important thing to you as an individual. Or like the reason you're here is not really explored. So I think one of the most critical conversations you can have, and it sounds like you have a structured format for that, which is fantastic, is just sitting down with each member of your team, like, why are you here? What matters to you? Because often, right, I'm sure you've had this. I've had employees where you assume a salesperson, the most important thing is compensation, right? It's how much money you can make. And that's great. Maybe it is. But then it's actually like, well, yeah, that's important. And also, my youngest is a senior in high school, and this is the last baseball season we have with. And man, the games start at 4, and it's so hard for me to get to games at 4 because you have me work till 5. And it's like if I could just make those baseball games, teams. That would be amazing. And then all of a sudden, once you know like what matters to them and why they're doing this, then you can adjust and say, cool, how do we align what matters to you, what your personal why statement, as you mentioned it, and the company why statement. And now you've got alignment. And when you align those two things, where what matters most to them contributes to what matters most to the company, you create transformative effects.
Yeah, the big challenge I've noticed, the biggest transformation I can get is to help the business owner get clear on their why. Because when the business owner isn't clear on why they do what they do, they end up doing the wrong things in the business. Because you're the business owner, you can do anything in the business. And so some business owners are like, well, I have to do the accounting. I'm the business owner. Do you really? If you hate accounting, you probably shouldn't be doing the accounting. You're not the right personality fit for that, which means you're actually probably not the best person to do that. So some business owners love sales, some love accounting, some hate it, some love operations, some are really bad at that. And so if we can get clear on their personal why, and then we can look at their role and see if their role is helping align with that, we can then reorganize the entire business. But most business owners, the first team they build as they transition from solopreneur to having a team, I find is a mess. The first team they have is built around the wrong person. And it's kind of like they're like, I'm this shaped puzzle piece, but it's not really them. They're like, I'm doing accounting, I'm doing this, and a little bit of this. And then they're like, now I'm going to get team members. I'm going to build puzzle pieces around this misshapen puzzle piece. And they fit that puzzle piece, but that's not even me. So I hate being in it. I'm uncomfortable in my own business. In property management, this is where they get to 200 to 400 doors. I call it the second sand trap or the team sand trap. They've made it through that transition of finally having a team from being a solopreneur, and they're the most miserable they've ever been in their business. And adding more doors makes their life personally worse, not better. Because adding more doors just means they're working harder. They're doing more work instead of getting the right support and the right team because they didn't build the right team around the right person from the beginning. So if I get them clear on their why, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm a circle. I'm not a square. I need to build this whole different team around me. And then like when I got clarity on this many years ago, I think within a month, I'd fired like half my team. I changed everything. I changed the type of clients I was willing to work with. I changed my business model. Like I didn't want to tolerate certain things anymore because, you know, I woke up one morning and I was like, I would rather stream Netflix and avoid growing my business, even though I need money, than deal with the clients I'm dealing with at that time. And I'm like, why am I so out of alignment? Then I saw Simon Sinek start with why, like presentation on the golden circle, why, how, what? And I was like, what? And I'm like, what's my why? And so I need to figure this out. And my personal why is to inspire others to love true principles. So what that means is I love finding the better way to do things. I love learning what works and sharing it with other people. I would do that for free, for fun. If you're listening to this podcast, I'm doing it for free, for fun right now. Like I love this and I love learning what's working for other people. And then I get to turn around and share that with clients and I get paid to do that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And that's all I get to live in my business. And so my business, it feeds me my why. And so our why statement at DoorGrow is to transform property management business owners and their businesses. So we get to create transformation. Everybody on my team buys into this vision. We all celebrate when our clients are winning. And so that's the culture we've created in the business. That's our mission, transformation. And we know if we transform the business owner, we transform the business. We transform the business, we transform the team. We transform the business and the team, we transform hundreds, maybe thousands of tenants and rental property owners' lives. There's this ripple effect. And that's exciting to me. We're having impact, right? And so the thing I can get on a sales call and confidently say to a property management business owner, here's why you should trust me. Because if I'm selfish in getting what I want out of life, my why, my business is going to give you what you need and you are going to win. And we can always trust motives. And so I call that the golden bridge. The golden bridge is find out the prospect's why. You build a bridge to it. The bridge is the business. It's what gives you both what you want. That's where the deal happens. And there's my why. There's the prospect's why. The business why is what connects us. And that's the golden bridge. And if I can relate that formula verbally, all the objections drop by the wayside because the only real objection is, I don't trust you. If they're like, what about these features? And what do you do with my property? And what do you do? How do you handle evictions? All they're saying is blah, blah, blah. I don't trust you yet. And so I just teach my clients the golden bridge formula and that we have, and then they become great at selling because sales is about trust. That's it.
Yeah, I love that framework. And also I want to call out an important mindset shift that I know I struggled with, and I think a lot of other owners struggle with that you mentioned there. which is this belief that if we're not suffering,
Yeah. It's like suffering's a badge of honor in entrepreneurism.
yeah, like if we're actually enjoying what we're doing, if we're having time off, if we're like you mentioned, if we're taking care of ourselves and we're like inspired and energetic and it doesn't feel
Yeah.
that hard, we must be doing something wrong, or we're being
Yeah.
lazy, or we're
Yeah.
not doing enough. And so then we're like constantly pushing ourselves to this point of I need to be overwhelmed. I need to be, and when things are going well, we'll crash the plane just so we can feel the pain again. So we feel
Yeah.
like we're being productive. And so I love the fact that you sounds like you sort of were running to that or identified that. And now the shift that it sounds like you've made around your mindset is like, what if this could be fun?
Yeah. What if you actually love doing what you were doing in your business? I'll tell you what happens, because I helped a lot of people do this. You make way more money. When you focus on the money instead of the mission, and you're not focused on your why, you make way less money. But money is easy when you are focused on helping people get what they want. You're outward focused, and you're being selfish enough to focus on your actual purpose. Money's not your purpose. If I say, why do you want money? There's a whole level of depth beneath that. Right. And
Yes.
so, yeah, but you're right. Like we're struggling, we're suffering, and it's like a badge of honor. Look at my hustle culture. And I'm like, oh, it's so hard. And then we start succeeding and the world gives us feedback, because the world isn't supportive of entrepreneurs. The world cares about safety and certainty more than freedom. Entrepreneurs care about freedom and fulfillment more than safety and security. And that's why we start businesses. That's a risk. But as soon as we start winning, what do we hear from people? It must be nice.
Yeah.
Well, it must be nice that you have this, Jason got his cyber truck, or he's in his $1 million house. It must be nice, And so you hear things like this and you're like, did I do something wrong? Maybe I need to be small because I'm making some people feel uncomfortable because, it's got to be a struggle. I can't show
Yeah.
that I'm having success because it's got to be hard.
Or enjoyment. Yeah.
I
It's gotta
didn't
be.
work hard enough to earn this, maybe is the feeling, or,
Yeah. I think
it
there's a
has to
lot
be
of that.
hard.
I know my relationship, as I've reflected back with money, with success, is I grew up with a single mom, and she was phenomenal. I mean, raised me, worked full time as a waitress and bartender to put herself through undergrad and grad school to be a school psychologist to work with special needs kids,
Yeah.
so that she could impact the world and take care of me. But
And love
in that,
was working hard. That's what you saw. Like
yeah,
she was
yeah.
hustling. You knew she loved you. She was serving. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so I would say there's two sides of that coin. One, what I tell people all the time is like, when you see your mom do that, or that's your leader, like
Yeah.
mediocrity is no longer acceptable. That's one
Yes.
thing I took away from it. And then
Yeah.
but there was this idea when we say we drove through nice neighborhoods, or we saw big houses, or we saw people with money, it was like it's like those people. Like it was very much put into, I feel like subconsciously, that I think that it was just a matter of like, there's this idea of that good people or hardworking, working class folks like us, we're doing sort of this noble thing. And these other people either just got lucky, or they're just different, or they were born into it, or,
Or
it's this
even
idea of those people.
or even worse, they were unethical or hurt
100.
people to get there. Those
Exactly.
rich people, those evil billionaires and those evil millionaires, and nobody should have that kind of money. They must have hurt people to get there. And yeah,
And
I
so that
know.
was like a story, even a money story and success story, that over the last 10 years as an entrepreneur with different businesses, and now as a coach of leaders inside companies
Yeah.
and business owners, that I've had to overcome. And I've found myself, to your point, sort of sabotaging or questioning when I do have certain levels of success or impact, and downplaying it, almost because I have this subconscious belief that like, wait a minute, if I make this amount of money, or if I get to do these things, is
Yeah.
like, like you said, am I deserving of that? Or is that even like an ethical thing to be able to do? I need to suffer more and drive myself back to the suffering
Yeah. I
conversation.
mean, the feedback we get from the world as entrepreneurs. So one of my frameworks is I call it the 4 reasons for starting a business. The first reason is fulfillment in life. That should be primary. We should be getting fulfillment in life, living our why, living our purpose. Number 2, it should be more and more freedom. The business should give us more and more freedom. Now, we initially as entrepreneurs, when we start our journey, we make more and more money. And the reason we want more money is we think it will give us more fulfillment and more freedom. But the default is, I've seen this over and over again, I live this, is we make more and more money and we have less fulfillment and freedom in our business initially. until we get clear on this, because we're aiming for the wrong goal. We're aiming for money, not the 4 reasons. Once we have fulfillment and freedom, though, once we figure that out, we're like, why am I doing this? I need to shift things. And we get alignment there. Then we want to benefit others. That's contribution. And that's actually why businesses exist. Businesses exist to contribute to the marketplace something of value, solve real problems. Otherwise, they're just snake oil and they're stealing people's money. And so true entrepreneurs, like they might start with just a motive of money, which maybe isn't the highest motive, but if they're going to be successful, eventually they graduate usually to contribution because that's the only thing that actually works in the marketplace. The marketplace is brutal to anything else. So it's almost like God tricks us into becoming good people by getting us to start businesses, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And so the fourth reason, once we have contribution, we have fulfillment, freedom, we're living a life where we feel like we're benefiting others, making a difference. And we can't have those first three without the fourth, which is support. There's no business owner that I know of that enjoys wearing every hat in their own business. And so we have to have a good team. We have to have a good support. Just like you were talking about in the military, like if you're going on a mission, you need some specialists that have expertise in different areas to make this work. Not everybody has the same personality, the same skills, the same intellectual abilities. And so we need other people if we want to stay in those first three. We can't have fulfillment, freedom, and contribution if we're doing stuff we don't enjoy. That's the opposite. And so we have to have team members. And that's why we build the vehicle of a business instead of just be a freelancer and do it all on our own. And so those are my 4 reasons. Now there is the fifth reason. The fifth reason is what everybody else wants. And we want this too as entrepreneurs, but the fifth reason is safety and security. This is what makes us different. Everybody else on the planet wants all 5 of these things, but most people on the planet place safety and security first. They're like, forget your freedom. We saw this during the pandemic. It's like, fuck your freedom. Like, we don't care about your freedom. I want to feel safe. Make everyone feel safe. Force it on everybody. Make everybody feel safe first. And then freedom would be a really nice afterthought. And then entrepreneurial people were like, what crazy planet am I on? Am I hanging out with the aliens? Like, I don't understand. I thought we were in the land of the free, home of the brave here in the US. And like, what's going on? And we have all these different basic hierarchy of needs, but the hierarchy is different for entrepreneurs versus everybody else. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I need people on my team that don't want to be the business owner.
Yeah.
I need them to be with me and enjoy it, right? And they need somebody that, like me, that's crazy, that's willing to take some of the risks. They just don't realize they're working for a crazy person, right? So that values freedom more than safety. So yeah. But look, I love safety and security too. That's why I have process documentation. I have systems. That makes me feel safe. If I lose somebody, right? So we need all of these things. So I love that you were pointing that out. Where should we go from here? Like we're almost at the time. And I love hearing how the military works. Because the military works, it's life or death. And there's clear objectives. And I feel like in business, things get so fuzzy and there's so much BS. And when we hear it in terms of military, we're like, duh, this would translate. I should do my business this way.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to wrap in the last couple of minutes is like, what are some key points there? I think that what the military does, because not everything in the military, this is from personal experience, translates perfectly over, right?
Sure, it's
but
not
there's
all
certain
exactly
things.
the same. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all exactly the same. But there are some similarities. I think that if there's an overarching word of why, and it's just true, good military units are able to accomplish seemingly impossible tasks.
Yeah.
Is clarity. Like extreme clarity and no nonsense around no clarity. And so whether that's clarity of mission, clarity of roles and responsibilities, who's doing what, when, and what are they committing to? There's so much sort of expectation or unsaid agreements that happen inside business where we make assumptions about what we think other people understand or what they think success is or roles is. Instead of saying, here's our clear mission, here's our outcomes, here's my role and responsibility, here's what I'm going to own. I mean, the amount of times I work with a company or an entrepreneur and we go in and they say, yeah, here are like the 12 things that are important before the next meeting. But there's no one's name next to it with a date.
Right. Like
it's like, hey, what did we talk about last meeting? Who's doing that?
Accountable?
Yeah, who's accountable? So I think being very clear about like what role and responsibility do you have so that you can lean into that. So clarity around roles and responsibilities, clarity around mission, and then clarity around, end state. Like what does success look like for this?
Right. What's the definition of done on this? Like, how do we know this is accomplished? I
And
love
so
it. Yeah.
I think if companies could really take that approach of clarity in those three areas, it could be transformative.
Totally agree. One of my mentors that really taught me operational stuff was a mentor named Alex Sharfin. And Alex would talk about outcome, transparency, and accountability. He was like a three-legged stool. And he said, there has to be a clear outcome, like who's responsible is also, right? So that's like outcome, transparency, accountability. Accountability is who, what are we trying to accomplish is the outcome. And then what's the scoreboard? How do we measure success? How do we know if it's done? And he said he would watch billionaires and follow them around, and they go into a meeting. They didn't know what was going on, what was being discussed, but there was a problem. He would just walk in and he would ask 3 questions and the problems were solved. Cool. What are we trying to accomplish? Okay. Who's responsible for this? Awesome. How do we know if it's done or not? And it was that simple. And then you walk out of the room and everybody's like, man, he's magic. So glad what a great leader. And I love it. Clarity is massive. One of the things, a lot of businesses don't even have the clear role or job descriptions defined for their existing team members. If I went to anyone listening to this, so I went to your team member, ask yourself this question, and I asked them, what are you responsible to achieve on a weekly, monthly basis? What is your job? What are your roles? What are you supposed to do? And then I went to the business owner, I went to you listening and said, what is their responsibility? What are these? I usually get 2 very different set of directions. But if you come to my team or hopefully some of my clients that I'm coaching and you ask that question, they would say, cool, let me pull up my document that is super clear that we review regularly. This is it. We've agreed on this. We're literally on the same page.
Yes.
And it's that simple. And so they know what outcomes they're responsible for. And the outcomes are more important than the responsibilities. So on our job descriptions, we have results. What results or expected accomplishments are there? And so little things like that. One of the things I love saying is lately is, this is one of my little phrases, is any action we take without clarity is a little bit wrong. Sometimes
I love that.
a lot wrong.
I love that.
Yeah. And so that's dangerous. We're like, the last thing you want to do on the battlefield is just rush out with a lot of gusto, guns a-blazing, with no plan and a lack of clarity. But in business, sometimes that's how we operate. We're shooting from the hip and we're like, woohoo. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. That's the thing, is because of the mission that the military has, the culture demands extreme clarity. And because of the mission of businesses, people can get away with leakage and mistakes because, it's not life or death. But if you treat your business like that, that's how you get to the next level of performance.
Love it. Cool. Sean, awesome having you on. Always fun to chat with you. We have some good conversations.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is really interesting to me. I love hearing how this all works and the contrast with military and whatnot. You brought up some really great points that really made me think, how can people get in touch with you? Tell them what you do real quick and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. So my personal site is seanpatton.me. Super easy to find. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I am a part of a larger firm called Novus Global, where we focus on creating meta performance leaders. A lot of the transformation we're talked about today. Yeah, LinkedIn and my website are the easiest places to get me. I'm also the host of the No Limit Leadership podcast. Please check that out. And Jason, you have a scheduled date. I'm excited to have you on that podcast in the future.
Yeah, I'm excited to be on that. That'll be great. It's been great having you. Cool. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Jason. Right. Appreciate the opportunity.
For those of you that are property management business owners and you felt maybe stuck, stagnant, you want to take your property management business to the next level, reach out to us at DoorGrow.com for a free training on how to get unlimited free leads. Text the word leads to 512-648-4608. Also, join our free Facebook community just for property management business owners at doorgrowclub.com. And if you want tips, tricks, ideas, and to learn about our offers, subscribe to our newsletter by going to doorgrow.com/subscribe. And if you found this even a little bit helpful, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on wherever you saw this. We'd really appreciate it. And until next time, remember, the slowest path to growth is to do it alone. So let's grow together. Bye, everyone.